Thank you for joining us today for another edition of Conversations with AARP. I'm Troy deChabert Schuster, your host and State Director for AARP in the Virgin Islands. Today's discussion is about the work AARP has been doing to foster change and promote livability for all Americans regardless of age or background, while highlighting our work in the Virgin Islands. The demographics of the United States is shifting significantly, with the recent data from the U.S. Census Bureau revealing that approximately 45 million Americans are age 65 or older, a number that is projected to reach 73 million by the year 2030. At that point, 1 in 5 Americans will be older than 65. The growth is particularly pronounced in the Virgin Islands, where presently 21% of the population is 65 or older. But the real moment of change will take place just a few years later. By 2035, the United States will, for the first time ever, be a country comprised of more older adults than children. Despite this growing, aging population, we are observing that many communities nationwide are largely unprepared to meet their needs. Many people lack access to services they want and need as they get old. Recognizing this gap, AARP created a network of support and access, the AARP Network of Age-Friendly States and Communities, also referred to as livable communities. This helps transform our country to be a great place for aging, from advocating for affordable, accessible healthcare and housing to creating functional outdoor spaces that ensures all Americans can live with dignity. AARP has been at the forefront of this pivotal work. Right here in the Virgin Islands, our commitment to creating livable communities is evident through our extensive initiatives over the past 5 years. A significant milestone in our advocacy has been the passage of the Complete Streets policy in the Virgin Islands. This initiative ensures that roadways throughout the territory are designed to enable safe, accessible thoroughfares for all users, highlighting AARP's commitment to enhancing access to essential services. Another cornerstone of our work has been successfully enrolling the Virgin Islands in the AARP network of age-friendly states and communities. By joining this network, the Virgin Islands, alongside AARP, have committed to a series of actionable initiatives toward a more livable community across 8 meaningful domains, from transportation and housing to social participation. Today, we have invited Coralette Hannon, Director of Livable Communities at AARP. Coralette is responsible for the strategic planning of AARP's campaigns aimed at designing communities where residents of all ages and backgrounds can thrive as they age. To discuss the efforts of AARP in advocating for environments where every individual can thrive regardless of their age. Together, we will explore the depths of AARP's advocacy for livable environments and the future of this work across the nation and the Virgin Islands. So we welcome Coralette Hannon. Coralette, welcome.
Hi, Troy. Thank you for inviting me today.
It's a great pleasure to have you with us. You have been my colleague in the National Office of AARP for almost 8 years that I've been with AARP. I'm sure you've been with AARP a lot longer than that, but you've been my colleague for my duration of my tenure, and we've had a great experience working together, working on livable communities, and you coaching us and guiding us along the way as we work to make the Virgin Islands more livable. So first of all, if you will, tell us a little bit about AARP's network of age-friendly states and communities, its background and where we are today with that network.
Sure. So again, thank you for including me in today's conversation. So I just want to share with everyone that I am working at AARP's Department of Government Affairs. There are three departments at AARP that I believe play a critical role in AARP's work in this space. One is Government Affairs, where I sit. There's also a programs team at Government Affairs, and then also our Public Policy Institute. So the network of age-friendly communities is led by our programs team, where they support our state offices in terms of getting communities and states as well to be formal members of the network. And then the government affairs team then works along with them and the state offices to ensure that policies are put in place and implemented that actually carry out the goals of the network as they are envisioned.
Yes, and so for our audience, when Governor Bryan became the governor of the Virgin Islands, Governor Albert Bryan Jr., he formally enrolled the territory in AARP's network of age-friendly states and communities. And we always remind our community that this is not an endorsement. It's not saying that the Virgin Islands is fully a livable community, but it signifies a commitment on behalf of the government to work toward making the Virgin Islands a much more livable community. And so we have had the support of the government and all its departments and the legislature over the years as we have worked toward that. And so, Coralette, if you will, tell us how the network of age-friendly states and communities then ties in with the broader, if I may use that term, livable communities campaign, how that all comes together.
Sure. So, for those who may not know, the network of age friendly communities is driven by 8 domains of livability. And if you don't mind, I just wanted to highlight those so that folks are
Yes.
aware of all the areas that are covered by the 8 domains. So, they are outdoor spaces and buildings, transportation and housing, social participation, respect and social inclusion, work and civic engagement, communication and information, and also community and health services. So, again, across the three groups that I mentioned earlier, all of us are playing a key role in the implementation or and the vision setting of achieving those particular goals. And I'm glad you also mentioned that by joining the network of age friendly communities, the Virgin Islands is not saying that we've accomplished all of these goals within these 8 domains. They're saying that there's a commitment to the vision of what's can be achieved through these 8 domains and to actually look to implement those 8 domains. In the policy arena, the Government Affairs Department focuses on, I would say, four key areas of all of the 8 domains. And those would be outdoor spaces, again, in buildings, transportation and housing, and then also communication and information. So, on our team in government affairs, we have federal lobbyists, we have state issue leads, and the state issue leads partner with the state offices, and we do refer to the U.S. Virgin Islands as a state office at AARP. And so we fight at the federal, state, and local levels alongside the state office to ensure, again, that policies that would allow older adults to independently age in place are able to do so. The one area that's not mentioned in the 8 domains that I would also like to highlight because it is a key area that we'd focus on our team is the area of utilities. So AARP puts resources into ensuring that, for instance, electricity, natural gas rates, and water rates are affordable and reliable and you have reliable service in those areas. So in combination in all of those areas, again, we feel like those are the areas in terms of policy making that will help to make a community livable for older adults.
And utilities is so important that affects all of us, and especially here in the Virgin Islands, we have one of the highest rates of electricity in the United States, and also one of the highest rates of water, potable water. And is internet service included in utilities? Yes.
It's not, so it's a separate issue, and I apologize, I didn't. It's in the communication and information bucket. So yes. High-speed internet service, broadband, is another key area of focus for us. And I'm hoping that we can talk a little bit more about that as part of this conversation. But we do recognize that even if you're able to stay in your home because, for instance, you have, the ability to perhaps live efficiently on the first level of your home, if you don't have a link to the outside world by means of a reliable high-speed internet connection, then that could be a hindrance to the ability of an older adult to stay in their homes. We also recognize that there's a lot of health services that now are being delivered by way of the internet. There are, banking, for instance, there are folks who are able to transact financial activities through the internet. So there's a lot of ways that the internet has become no longer a luxury, but is actually an essential service for not just older adults, but all of us in this day and age.
And now that we're talking about internet, high-speed internet, let's jump right into affordable connectivity. I know that's an issue that you wanted to talk about, so let's just dive right into that and tell us what is that about, affordable connectivity, the beginnings of it, the genesis of it, and where we are today and what we're looking forward to in the near future with that.
I would be happy to. So, about 2 years, the federal government passed the IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, for those of you who may be interested. There were $42 billion were included in that legislation, and part of those funds were dedicated to helping make internet service more affordable to those who, excuse me, pardon me, who need some assistance to be able to afford internet service. So the program, the Affordable Connectivity Program, provides 30 up to $30 per month of assistance, again to help. Those who are eligible to afford that service. In some places, that $30 actually covers the entire expense of their internet service. So, in effect, they're actually getting internet service for
Yeah.
free. Unfortunately, and because the program has been such a success, I looked back at the data this morning, and actually 6,780 households in the Virgin Islands have actually signed up for this program. But because it's been such a success, the program is actually slated to run out of money by April if the federal government does not allocate additional funding for this program. Now, AARP is fighting at the federal level for more funding, but because there is a strong possibility that the funding may run out, the Federal Communications Commission has required all internet service providers to start notifying their customers who are on the program that the program may come to an end. There was a notice that was required to go out in January. There is a second notice that should be going out by mid-March, and then the final notice will go out in April if funding is not secured, to let consumers know that the program is ending and to let them know what their options are for continuing on with their service if they, can no longer afford it without the $30 benefit that they're currently receiving. So again, we're trying to get the word out to our members and the public about the status of the program. I did want to share an 800 number if you don't mind.
Yes, please
So,
do.
if there's anyone who listens to this broadcast who is either a participant in the program or knows somebody who's a participant in the program, I would encourage them to reach out to the ACP Support Center. And the phone number is 877 384 2575. Again, it's 877 384 2575. And by calling that number, they can get more information about what their options are and get an update on what's happening with the program.
Yes, and so is there any hope of it being funded, or is there any talk about that on the national level yet, about it being funded to extend it?
There is hope and there is a possibility of funding. There is a bill that AARP is supporting and other consumer groups are supporting. It's the Affordable Connectivity Program Extension Act of 2024. So if you Google that phrase, you'll get a chance to see the bill itself. But it's a bipartisan bill, so it's supported by both Democratic and Republican members of Congress. It's also bicameral, so there's an identical bill in the House and an identical bill in the Senate. So that is what we believe right now is the strongest vehicle to continue funding, and it would appropriate or it would call for the appropriation of $7 billion to extend the program through at least 2024. And the hope is that by extending the program at least for another year, that will give the federal government and the FCC and policymakers a chance to determine or to develop a sustainable long-term program that will provide long-term assistance for folks who need it, again, to be able to afford their service.
Excellent. So there is hope, and we encourage any of those who are living in the U.S. mainland or even here, contact your delegate to Congress. Stacey Plaskett, our delegate to United States Congress, our congresswoman, or if you're living on the mainland, please do contact your congressman and ask them to move this forward so that people in need can continue to experience free or at least reduced internet rates. And so here in the Virgin Islands, we were successful at having complete streets policy passed and enacted. Tell us about complete streets from the national perspective.
Yes, I was so thrilled when Pam told me that you all had passed the policy. I know you had worked on it for a couple of years and it required a lot of work and collaboration with others to get it passed. So, Complete Streets is one of the marquee issues of AARP's efforts as far as policymaking is concerned. There are about, I believe, 1,700 policies that have been passed at the across the country at the state and local levels. And so, the Virgin Islands has joined a strong group of other states and communities that understand that having access to safe roadways is important for our communities. Because the bottom line is, and the truth is that there are members of our communities, and not just older people in our communities, but there are members of our communities that either cannot drive or for whatever reason choose not to drive. And so we have to have the ability for them to be able to get to the places that they want to go. And that's where Complete Streets policies come in. So those policies are written to ensure that our roadways are designed for all users. So again, to make sure that pedestrians have safe access to our roadways, those who are riding bicycles and using assistive devices have access to our roadways, and that also there are places for cars and trucks as well. But again, designing roadways so that all modes of transportation are can be accommodated.
And so part of that policy is setting up a complete streets task force. In our case, that task force will sit within the Department of Public Works. The task force has not yet stood up, but we are working toward that. The Walkability Institute, which was started within the Department of Health here in the Virgin Islands, is now domiciled in the University of the Virgin Islands, and AARP continues to be part of that Walkability Institute. And together we are working with the Commissioner of Public Works and so reminding him and the governor that it's now law to have the Complete Streets Task Force stood up within the Department of Public Works. And then that task force will work along with the engineers in the Department of Public Works and with the commissioner himself to make sure that as streets are repaired or as new streets are constructed, that we make them complete. As you already described what a complete street is all about. So we're looking forward to seeing more complete streets here in the Virgin Islands. So the Complete Streets policy is one of the major works of the Livable Communities initiative across the United States and has already achieved success here in the Virgin Islands. But can you share with us some more major initiatives of Livable Communities?
Sure. So across the issue areas that are covered, I just want to make sure across the issue areas that are covered by the team.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So again, we know transportation is a key area of focus. And I do also want to highlight in the area of transportation that last year at the federal level, we were able to effectively fight for the accessibility of lavatories on airlines. So not only do we work in the space of roadway safety, but we also, AARP, has an interest in airline safety as well. So I wanted to highlight that as an area that we had a significant win in recently in the transportation space. In the housing space, we have done a lot of work to ensure that, or to work on efforts that would make housing more affordable for those who need assistance with their housing affordability issues. Also, this year, we're going to be embarking on developing a model bill on what we call universal design. So I mentioned earlier that for anyone to be able to live independently in their home as they age, they must be able to navigate within their home. So they must be able to reach their kitchen, be able to bathe, have facilities to bathe and things like that. So universal design ensures that a home is organized and laid out in a way that is accessible, including for those who might be in wheelchairs. So we're going to be working a lot in that space this year as well. In addition, we're working to ensure that there's an issue called unfair service agreements. And not to get too deep into the weeds on this issue, but there are companies that are unfortunately taking advantage of homeowners, and a lot of time older homeowners, where they're requiring homeowners to engage in long-term service agreements, and so that when they go to sell their home, they're obligated to use a particular company to sell their home, and they're required to pay high fees. And so we're fighting against those predatory practices as a part of our team as well. I had mentioned the broadband work that we're doing. That work will continue. There's also a bucket of money in that space from the federal government that's called digital equity funding, to ensure that older adults and other underserved populations actually have access to internet service. So AARP will continue to work in that space. And then also, as I mentioned earlier, the utilities space. We're looking to equip our state offices to where there's opportunities to impact the rate making process within their territory or their state. We're equipping state offices to engage in that space as well.
And I would guess that that would be one of our initiatives locally in the near future, because again, the very high cost of electricity here and the high cost of potable water, and all of the residents of the Virgin Islands are complaining. It has a negative impact on the entire economy, especially on businesses and many small businesses who can't even afford to pay their electric bill. We have seen businesses close as a result. We've seen restaurants close, grocery stores close. Those types of businesses that use a lot of electricity to cool food, to freeze food, to cook, etc. So that's a major concern for us here in the Virgin Islands. I'm so happy, Coralette, that we're having this conversation today for so many reasons, but in particular, here in the Virgin Islands, many people, like in many other parts of the country, see AARP as an insurance company, and we're always reminding them that we're not an insurance company. We do not sell insurance. So please, do not come to us to ask insurance questions. We can't help you. We always have visitors to our state office asking about insurance products. But AARP is a social mission organization. And the pinnacle of our work is our advocacy. Everywhere from Capitol Hill to every state and municipality across the country, including the territories we serve, which are Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And so that's why this conversation is so very important, to highlight the very important and very impactful advocacy of AARP nationally and locally. And so, what do you see on the horizons for livable communities? Anything that's being discussed? Any ideas that are being tossed around that you can share with us at this juncture?
That's a very good question. We just had a retreat actually last week where we were talking about future casting and what's coming down and what's coming around the corner on the issues that we work on. Quite frankly, though, affordable housing, accessible transportation, the need for affordable broadband, the need for affordable utilities, those issues will continue to be the cornerstone of the issues that we work on within the Livable Communities team in government affairs. But the one area that I will highlight for folks is artificial intelligence, AI. We're all trying to figure out how that's going to impact all of the issue areas that we focus on. Because again, it's going to cut across all of the areas. It's going to be an election issue, but we're not going to get into that, but it will be an election issue. But again, it will play out probably in all of the issue areas that we focus on. So for us, we feel like the intensity of the work that we're engaged in, the resources that we develop to support the work that you and the Virgin Islands and our other state offices do in the issue areas that we focus on, I think we're going to be looking at creating more resources so that you all are equipped to work on the issues that, that are important to you in the states. So really, I feel like the work will continue because again, we haven't solved it yet, and it's such critical foundational issues that everyone is dealing with on their a day-to-day basis that we're going to continue to focus on.
Excellent. There's so much to be done. AARP will never become obsolete, right? There are always more and more issues.
That's
Every time we solve one problem, it seems that there's another one right around the corner. And as the population continues to age, that makes AARP even more relevant. And here in the Virgin Islands, we're always encouraging even a younger demographic under the age of 50 to become aware of the work we do, to join us in our advocacy, to help to push policies forward, because we're all on that trajectory, right? We're all getting older. And
that's right.
at some point, AARP is going to benefit all of us, whether you're 1 year old right now or 25 or 45.
That's
So
right.
we always invite people to join us and to, when you do come to our office, ask us about our advocacy. Ask us the many great advocacy initiatives we have here in the Virgin Islands, and the many wonderful workshops and other outreach activities that we have going on, educational workshops, always seeking to empower older Americans, older Virgin Islanders to choose how they live as they age. And so, Coralette, in the last couple of minutes or so, how can people find out more information about livable communities, and how can more people become involved, even on the national level, with what AARP is doing?
Sure. I would say go, first of all, I would give you a website to go to. So aarp.org/livable is a place that I would go send folks to get just an abundance of information about all the work that AARP is doing in the livable community space. And then you can also go to aarp.org/public policy. And you can find out what is happening on our Public Policy Institute. And then the Government Watch. So if you Google AARP Government Watch, you can also get information about what we're doing in the advocacy space. So again, those three areas are where a lot of the livable communities work is happening. So I would encourage folks to go to those sources to get information. But quite frankly, I would also encourage them to come to your office. You really are the portal to AARP and the national office. And, stakeholders can come and let you know what they're interested in, and then you can determine if it's a priority for your office, and then figure out with us how we can best support you in that work.
Yes, and talking about our offices, we are actually in between new offices on both islands. So on St. Croix, for our listening and viewing audience, our state office is not fully functioning and open to the public because we're in a temporary office space. Hopefully by the end of this year, we'll be in our new state office in St. Thomas. We just moved out of the Frost Co. building near Banco Popular headquarters. And so we don't have our new office space yet, but that will be in the Royal Palms building adjacent to the hospital over there, the Schneider Regional Medical Center. So again, that office is not yet functional. That should be functional within the next 2 months or so. And then that will be open to the public. But you can still contact us by phone. You can find our phone on the website at aarp.org/VI, as well as lots of information of what we're doing here in the Virgin Islands. And our associate state director, who works along with me, I'm the state director, but our associate state director, Pamela Toussaint, who is stationed on St. Thomas, but no stranger to St. Croix, is our associate state director of advocacy and community outreach. You can always reach out to her. So, Coralette, thank you so much for being on our show. Our time has run out, and we look forward to having more conversations with you in the future and learning more about livable communities.
Thank you.
Thank you.